The predator cubs achieved synchronized neural coherence, despite lacking the cerebral capacity for abstract thought. Let me be clear about something, colleagues. I had been running the station nursery for 11 cycles. 11 cycles of chaos, of shrieks that could shatter hull plating, of tiny claws shredding everything softer than titanium alloy. Predator cubs are, by definition, loud. They scream, they howl, they make noises that trigger every prey instinct coded into our DNA. Silence from a predator nursery means one of three things. They are sleeping, which never happens simultaneously. They are dead, which would require a catastrophic life support failure. Or they are hunting. I chose to believe option 3 because the alternative was checking life signs on 23 individuals while hoping they were not, in fact, preparing to ambush me. The nursery door opened with its standard pneumatic hiss. I stepped through, every sensory organ on high alert, ready for the pounce that inevitably came when cubs smelled fresh prey entering their territory. Nothing. The silence pressed against my auditory receptors like physical weight. I could hear the environmental systems, the whisper of recycled air, my own circulatory system pulsing too fast. Then I saw them. 23 predator cubs, aged 2 to 4 standard cycles, sitting in perfect circles. 4 circles of 5 cubs each, 1 circle of 3. Not huddled, which they did for warmth. Not crouched, which they did before pouncing. Sitting. Upright on their haunches, tails curved around their bodies, forepaws placed precisely in front of them. Every single cub had their eyes closed. Their breathing rose and fell in perfect synchronization. I may have stopped respiratory function for several seconds. Cubs do not sit still. Cubs do not close their eyes unless unconscious. Cubs certainly do not arrange themselves in geometric patterns like some sort of ancient ritual formation. I activated my comm unit with shaking appendages. Virgen, I need security to Nursery 3 immediately. Define immediately, Kilvan. The cubs are behaving like a hive mind, and I am approximately 30 seconds from full panic response. Virgen materialized within 2 minutes, which is fast even for our security chief. He stopped in the doorway, his crest flattening in the way it does when his threat assessment protocols encounter something outside programmed parameters. They are breathing together, he said. I noticed. They are not moving. Also noticed. This is not normal cub behavior. Security expertise at its finest, truly. I could not help the sarcasm. My nerves were singing at frequencies I did not know I could produce. Virgen approached the nearest circle slowly, his scanner active. The cubs did not react, did not twitch, did not sniff, did not acknowledge his presence in any way. For predators whose entire evolutionary strategy revolved around noticing prey, this was roughly equivalent to stars deciding to stop fusion. Neural activity is elevated, Virgen reported, but not distressed. Brainwave patterns are synchronized within each circle. Kilvan, they are matching each other's cognitive rhythms. Predator cubs cannot do that. Their cerebral development does not support that level of neural complexity until at least cycle 8. I had 3 degrees in xenobiology and 2 in child development. Everything I knew said this was impossible. Then we have a problem, because they are definitely doing it. The door opened again. I actually jumped, which I am not proud of, but my nerves were already strained beyond tolerance. A human walked in. Female from the biological markers, carrying a bag over one shoulder and holding a datapad in the other hand. She looked at the circles of meditating predator cubs, looked at me and Virgen standing there like our cognitive functions had failed, and smiled. Oh good, they are already practicing. Sorry I am late. The shuttle from the transport hub took forever. I am Quinn, your new enrichment coordinator. I stared at her. Virgan stared at her. The cubs continued their synchronized breathing, utterly undisturbed. Practicing, I repeated, because my language centers were apparently only capable of echoing single words. The focus exercises. I sent the introduction protocols 2 weeks ago through the station education network. Quinn walked past us like 23 predator cubs in trance states were completely normal, which they were not. Did you not get my materials? I received a file from Earth about something called puppy kindergarten. I assumed it was misfiled. Nope, that was for you. Well, adapted for the cubs, obviously. Dogs and predator cubs have really similar developmental needs. High energy, prey drive, need for structure, and impulse control. She crouched near one of the circles, extending her hand slowly. The nearest cub's nose twitched. Hey there, gorgeous. Good focus. That is really impressive work. The cub opened one eye, looked at Quinn, then closed it again, and resumed the synchronized breathing. Explain to me, I said, with what I considered admirable restraint, how you taught apex predator cubs to meditate. I did not teach them to meditate. I taught them to settle. Quinn pulled a small device from her bag, something that looked like a sound emitter. It is basic impulse control. You give them a cue, they practice holding still and calm, you reward the behavior. Eventually, they start doing it on their own because it feels good. Reduces stress hormones, helps with emotional regulation. She pressed the device. A whistle pattern emerged, 3 tones in quick succession. Every cub in every circle opened their eyes simultaneously, looked at Quinn, and wagged their tails. My cardiovascular system attempted to exit my body. Release, Quinn said clearly, and the circles dissolved into chaos. Cubs tumbled over each other, pounced, play-fought, made the horrible shrieking, noises that I had grown accustomed to as the soundtrack of my professional existence. Normal cub behavior resumed as though the previous 10 minutes had been a shared hallucination. You trained them, Virgan said, like animals. They are animals. Really smart animals who need help learning how to manage their instincts. Quinn pulled small treats from her bag, tossing them to cubs who approached her. They caught them with snapping jaws, tails thrashing happily. Predators do not come pre-programmed with impulse control. They have to learn it, same as any species. I just gave them the tools. I looked at the cubs, now engaged in an elaborate game that seemed to involve tackle pouncing while trying to steal each other's treats. They looked normal. They sounded normal. Except 10 minutes ago, they had been demonstrating cognitive synchronization that should not be possible for another 4 cycles of development. How long did this training take? I asked. I have been here 2 weeks, remember? Oh wait, no, I have not been here. I sent the preliminary exercises. You mean someone else implemented them? Quinn looked genuinely surprised. Who? No one implemented anything. I thought it was a filing error. Then who taught the cubs? We all looked at the cubs. The cubs looked back at us with innocent eyes that were definitely not innocent. One of them, a female with gray-brown fur, sat down unprompted, placed her forepaws in front of her, and closed her eyes. 3 other cubs immediately stopped playing and copied her position. Oh, that is fantastic, Quinn said, delighted. They are teaching each other. That is advanced social learning. I did not expect that for at least another month. Predator cubs do not teach each other, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own auditory receptors. They learn through observation and instinct, but not active pedagogy. They lack the cognitive framework. They clearly do not lack it, because that cub just deliberately modeled behavior for her peers, and they copied her. Quinn was making notes on her datapad now, muttering about developmental acceleration and positive reinforcement loops. Virgin activated his comm. I need medical to Nursery 3. Specifically, I need ThrenuX and the full neural scanning array. Is someone injured? The physician's voice crackled through the speaker. No. But I need you to confirm that I am not experiencing a neurological event, because what I am seeing is not possible. Threnu arrived with 2 assistants carrying equipment that I recognized as the deep scan array, typically reserved for diagnosing serious cognitive disorders. The cubs watched with interest as the team set up, but did not approach. Another behavioral change. Cubs were curious to the point of self-harm. They investigated everything, usually with their mouths. These cubs sat in a loose group, observing but not interfering. This is already unusual, Threnu commented. They are not attempting to chew the medical equipment. Wait until you see what they do for an encore, Virgin said darkly. Quinn pulled out her whistle device again. Can I show them? Please do, I said, because whatever was happening, I needed documentation that would stand up to official inquiry. 3 tones. Every cub in the room stopped what they were doing, found a space, and sat. Eyes closed, breathing synchronized, perfect stillness. The medical scanners lit up like someone had set off an alarm. That is not possible, Threnu said, which was becoming the theme of the day. Their brainwave patterns are synchronizing, not just within proximity groups, across the entire room. I am reading neural coherence at levels I would expect from a bonded adult pack, not individual cubs. They are forming a Gestalt consciousness. Virgin's crest went flat again. No, not a true Gestalt. They are maintaining individual cognitive function, but their neural rhythms are aligning. It is like watching a hive mind in slow motion, except they can break it at will. Threnux looked at Quinn. How did you do this? I taught them to focus. It is a standard calming exercise. You learn to pay attention to your breathing, notice your body, let go of distracting impulses. Helps with anxiety and behavioral control. Quinn seemed genuinely confused by our reactions. This is basic stuff. We teach it to dogs, horses, even cats if they are food-motivated enough. Dogs are not predator cubs, I said. Dogs are literally domesticated predators. Humans bred them from wolves, which are pack hunters. Same basic psychology, just with different parameters. She gestured at the cubs. These guys needed an outlet for their energy and a way to manage their hunting instincts. The focus exercises give them that. Plus, it tires out their brains, which is just as important as physical exercise. The gray-brown female cub, the one who had started teaching the others, opened one eye. She looked directly at Quinn, then at the scanner equipment, then back at Quinn. Her tail twitched once. She is asking permission to investigate, Quinn said. How could you possibly know that? I asked. Body language. See how her weight shifted forward but she stayed seated? That is a request. She wants to check out the scanners but she is waiting for the okay. Quinn made a small hand gesture. Go ahead. Careful. The cub stood, approached the scanner array slowly, and sniffed the equipment with careful precision. She did not chew it, did not bat at it with her paws. Just investigated, then returned to her spot and sat down again. Threnix's secondary respiratory spiracles flared, which happened when he was deeply disturbed. That cub just demonstrated delayed gratification, impulse inhibition, and request protocols. She is 3 cycles old. She should not be capable of any of those behaviors for another 5 cycles minimum. Or maybe we have been underestimating them, Quinn said. Happens a lot with predator species. Everyone assumes they are just instinct-driven eating machines. But give them structure. Teach them they have choices. Show them how to regulate their emotions. And suddenly, they are a lot smarter than anyone gave them credit for. The scans continued for another 20 minutes. Every reading confirmed what my own senses were telling me, but my education said was impossible. The cubs were not just learning these behaviors. They were integrating them, building on them, developing new variations without external prompting. I need to report this, I said finally. To the station director, to the Child Development Council, to someone with more authority than I have. Why? Quinn asked. They are just cubs learning how to be calm. It is good for them. Because in 3 weeks, you have somehow accelerated their cognitive development by 5 cycles and taught them to achieve neural synchronization that should be biologically impossible. That is why. Quinn looked at the cubs, who had been released from their focus exercise and were now playing an elaborate game that seemed to have rules. Actual rules that they were enforcing among themselves, with cubs sitting out voluntarily when they broke the parameters. Huh, she said. I guess that is kind of weird. I just thought they were smart. The gray-brown female approached me, sat down without being asked, and placed one paw on my lower appendage. Not aggressively, gently. She looked up at me with eyes that seemed far too aware for a creature who should still be operating mostly on instinct. Then she returned to the game, and I watched 23 predator cubs play with a level of cooperation and self-regulation that I had never seen in cubs twice their age. Virgin's calm was already active, his voice tight with the kind of stress that came from reality refusing to follow established rules. I need a full security lockdown on Nursery 3. No one in or out without clearance. And someone get me a xenopsychology team. Now. Quinn sat on the floor, cubs climbing over her like she was terrain. Is that really necessary? They are just kids learning stuff. They are forming a low-level Gestalt consciousness network, Threnuk said, reading his scanner. Their individual neural patterns are maintaining distinct identity markers, but they are also creating bridging connections between brains. Quinn, they are linking their minds together. She looked at the cubs, then at us, then back at the cubs. That is probably fine, she said, which was the most alarming statement I had heard in my entire career. So there I was, watching my entire nursery get sealed like we were containing a biological weapon, when really we just had 23 cubs who learned to share brain space. Virgin posted guards outside the doors. Actual armed guards, as if the cubs might stage a coordinated escape using their newfound mental powers. The cubs, for their part, seemed utterly unconcerned. They played their rule-based games, occasionally stopping to sit in their circles and breathe together like tiny, furry meditation masters. Quinn sat cross-legged on the floor, treats in one hand, datapad in the other, documenting everything with the calm efficiency of someone who genuinely did not understand why everyone else was panicking. I need you to stop, I told her. Stop what? Whatever you are doing that is making their brains connect. I am not making them do anything. They are choosing to practice the exercises because it feels good. She tossed a treat to a cub who had politely sat and waited. Positive reinforcement. Basic learning theory. The door opened and Kellix rushed in. Her collection of advanced degrees in child development, practically radiating from her agitated posture. She had consulted on cub psychology for the past 15 cycles, authored 2 books on predator cognition, and was generally recognized as the station's foremost expert on exactly this situation. She took one look at the cubs and stopped moving. "They are sitting in mathematical formations," she said. "Yes," I confirmed. "Their breathing is synchronized." "Also, yes. Kilvan, this violates every established model of predator-cub neurology." "I am aware." Kellix approached the nearest circle like she was approaching a reactor breach. The cubs ignored her, maintaining their focus exercise with impressive dedication. She pulled out a portable scanner, ran it over the group, and her chromatic patches shifted through 3 colors I had never seen her display before. Their prefrontal neural clusters are firing in patterns consistent with abstract reasoning. These cubs are thinking about thinking. They have achieved metacognition. She looked at Quinn. "You did this in 2 weeks?" "I did not do anything. I just sent some training protocols. They did the work themselves." "Impossible. Predator cubs lack the neural plasticity for this kind of rapid cognitive restructuring." "Apparently not," Quinn said, making another note on her datapad. The gray-brown female, who I was mentally calling circle leader because she seemed to initiate most of the group exercises, stood up. She walked to the center of the room, sat down, and made a low, chirping sound. 3 other cubs immediately came over and formed a circle around her. Then they just sat there, eyes closed, breathing together. "Did she just summon them?" Kellix asked. "She calls that group her focus pod," Quinn explained. "They practice together most often, so they have the strongest synchronization. Watch this." She pulled out her whistle and blew a different pattern, 4 tones instead of 3. Circle leader opened her eyes but stayed seated. The other 3 cubs in her group maintained their focus. She looked at Quinn, tail swishing once, waiting. "Good wait," Quinn said. "Release." Only circle leader stood. The other 3 cubs remained in their meditative state until circle leader chirped again, at which point they opened their eyes and resumed playing. "She has command authority over them," Virgan said from his position by the door. "That cub is directing the others. She is the most advanced practitioner, so the others follow her lead," Quinn corrected. "It is social learning, not dominance hierarchy. Big difference." Kellix ran more scans, her agitation increasing with each reading. Their individual neural signatures are maintaining integrity, but they are also generating harmonic resonance patterns between brains. It is like they are creating a shared cognitive space while still being individuals. "Is that bad?" Quinn asked. "I do not know. This has never happened before. Predator species do not develop hive traits. They are evolutionary apex individualists. Maybe they just needed someone to teach them cooperation," Quinn suggested. She demonstrated another exercise, where cubs had to wait their turn for treats while others went first. Every single cub managed it. No fighting, no snatching, just patient waiting and polite turn-taking. I watched cubs who 3 weeks ago would have torn each other apart over food, now voluntarily deferring to their peers. My entire understanding of predator psychology was crumbling in real time. "I am calling the Galactic Child Development Council," Kellix announced. "This requires oversight beyond station authority." "They are just learning impulse control," Quinn protested. "They are rewriting their own neural architecture," Kellix countered. "That is slightly different." Circle leader approached me again, sat without prompting, and placed both paws on my lower appendages. She looked up at me with those 2 aware eyes and made a sound I had never heard a cub make before. Soft, questioning, almost conversational. "She is trying to communicate," I whispered. "Of course she is," Quinn said, like this was obvious. "She has things to say. We just need to teach her how to say them." That statement hung in the air like a detonation waiting to happen. The Galactic Child Development Council arrived in force, which is to say, they sent 3 of their most decorated experts, along with enough scanning equipment, to analyze a small moon. I stood in my own nursery, feeling like an imposter, while beings with credentials that outweighed my entire career examined cubs who were, at that moment, playing a game that appeared to involve tactical flanking maneuvers. Dr. Xelmoth had written the definitive text on predator cognition. Professor Tinara had spent 30 cycles studying pack dynamics across 12 species. Researcher Quinn specialized in impossible developmental anomalies. They represented the absolute peak of our understanding of how young predator minds worked. The cubs made them look like first-year students. "The neural bridging is not metaphorical," Xelmoth announced after running his 3rd full scan. "They are generating actual electromagnetic connections between their individual consciousness centers. Low-level, but measurable and, apparently, volitional." "Predators do not do this," Tinara said. Her tone suggesting reality had personally offended her. "Pack bonds create social cohesion, not cognitive networking. These are separate neurological phenomena." "Perhaps our models were incomplete," Quinn suggested, which earned her sharp looks from her colleagues. Quinn sat in the corner, working with Circle Leader and her focus pod. She had introduced something she called cooperative games, where cubs had to work together to achieve a goal. Currently, 4 cubs were attempting to retrieve a treat from a puzzle box that required simultaneous manipulation of 3 different latches. They were succeeding. "This problem-solving behavior is consistent with 6-cycle developmental markers," I said, watching a 3-cycle-old cub coordinate her movements with 3 peers to trip the final mechanism. "They should not be capable of this." "They should not be capable of any of this," Xelmoth corrected. "Their cerebral cortex does not have sufficient synaptic density to support this level of abstract reasoning. Yet here we are," Circle Leader chirped. Her 3 podmates immediately sat down and closed their eyes. She looked at Quinn expectantly. "Not yet, gorgeous. You need to show me you can hold it longer." Quinn held up 5 fingers. 5 counts, then release. Circle Leader settled into the focus position herself. 4 cubs, breathing in perfect synchronization, for a count of 5 that felt like 5 hours given the tension in the room. Then Quinn made a small gesture, and they exploded back into motion, tails wagging, clearly pleased with themselves. "She understood the numerical concept," Quinn said quietly. "That cub comprehended a delayed reward condition based on an abstract counting system." "We teach counting to dogs," Quinn said. "Basic number sense is not that complex if you break it down into concrete steps." "Dogs have been selectively bred for cognitive enhancement over thousands of generations," Tinara snapped. "These cubs are wild predators 3 cycles removed from their ancestral hunting grounds." "So were dogs once. Wolves do not naturally fetch sticks or roll over on command. Humans taught them." Quinn stood, dusting fur off her clothing. "You keep acting like training changes what they are. It just helps them access what they already could be." Another group of cubs had spontaneously formed a circle near the viewing window. No prompting from Quinn, no whistle pattern, just 5 cubs who decided collectively that now was a good time for focus practice. Their breathing synchronized within seconds. Xelmoth's scanning equipment lit up like a solar flare. The neural bridging is strengthening with each session. They are not just mirroring each other's brain patterns anymore. They are actively building persistent connection pathways. Is that dangerous? I asked, because someone had to. I have no idea. This is not supposed to be possible, so I have no framework for evaluating risk. He looked at Quinn with something between awe and accusation. What else have you taught them? Just the basics. Focus, wait, gentle, settle, leave it. She counted on her fingers. Oh, and we started working on name recognition. They are getting really good at that. Name recognition, Tinara repeated. Yeah, individual identity markers. I use different whistle patterns for different cubs so they learn to respond to their specific signal. Quinn demonstrated, blowing a distinctive four-tone pattern. Circle Leader's ears perked up immediately. See? She knows that is her name. You named them, I said. Well, I needed to call them something. She is Whistle because she started mimicking my patterns. That big male is Steady because he can hold focus longer than anyone. The little gray one is Quick because she learns everything on the first try. Quinn pointed to various cubs like this was completely normal. Names help with individual bonding and self-concept development. The cubs she had named were the most advanced practitioners. I realized with creeping horror that Quinn had not just taught them group meditation. She had taught them identity, self-awareness, the cognitive foundation for personhood. They are not just learning skills, Volquin said, reaching the same conclusion. They are developing individual personalities within a collective framework. This is how hive minds begin, except they are maintaining their independence. Steady, the large male Quinn had named, approached the council experts with careful deliberation. He sat down in front of Zelmoth, placed one paw forward, and waited. When Zelmoth did not respond, Steady extended his paw further and made a low, questioning sound. What does he want? Zelmoth asked. He is asking you to acknowledge him, Quinn said. We have been working on polite greeting behaviors. He wants you to touch his paw. That is a socialization protocol. Yes, and? Predator cubs do not have socialization protocols. They have dominance displays and submission postures. Not anymore, they do not. Quinn nodded at Steady, who was still waiting patiently. You can touch his paw or ignore him, but he is going to sit there until you make a choice. He is very persistent. Zelmoth, looking deeply uncomfortable, extended one appendage and briefly made contact with Steady's paw. The cub's tail wagged once, slowly, and then he returned to his playgroup. He just initiated a social contract, Tinara said. That cub deliberately created a reciprocal interaction with an unfamiliar adult. Puppy kindergarten week 3 material, Quinn said. Greeting strangers politely, pretty standard stuff. Quick, the small gray cub, had found a puzzle toy and was working through it with focused intensity. When she completed it, instead of immediately consuming the treat inside, she carried it to Circle Leader and dropped it in front of her. Circle Leader chirped, and suddenly all the cubs in the room stopped playing and formed their circles. No whistle from Quinn, no external cue. They had decided, collectively, to practice. They are self-organizing, I said, my voice barely functional, without external direction. That is what happens when you teach impulse control and give them agency, Quinn explained. They start making their own choices about when to practice and when to play. It is actually a sign of really healthy development. 23 cubs sat in their circles, breathing together, their minds touching across the space between their bodies in ways that should not exist. I watched the scanning equipment register their synchronized neural patterns and felt my entire education become obsolete. Zelmoth set down his scanner. I need to ask you a direct question, human Quinn. Did you know this would happen? Did I know that teaching cubs to focus would make them smarter and more connected? No. I thought it would just help them calm down and stop destroying everything. She looked at the meditation circles with obvious affection. But I am not surprised they are exceeding expectations. Predators are really intelligent when you give them the right tools. You have fundamentally altered their developmental trajectory, Tinara said. These cubs will not grow into the adults we expected. They will be something entirely new. Something better, maybe, Quinn suggested. Something unknown. Circle leader opened her eyes but remained seated. She looked at each council expert in turn, her gaze lingering on their faces with unnerving intensity. Then she looked at me, at Virgan still guarding the door, at Threnix monitoring his medical readouts. Finally, she looked at Quinn and made a complex series of chirps and low sounds. She is trying to form words, Volquin said, his scanner trembling in his grip. That cub is attempting structured language. She has a lot to say, Quinn agreed. We are working on it. Virgan's comm activated with an urgent tone. Security chief, we have a situation. The other nurseries are reporting behavioral changes in their cubs. They are forming circles. They are sitting still. Sir, it is spreading. Every head turned to stare at the meditation circles. At 23 cubs who had somehow learned to touch minds and were now, apparently, teaching others. How is that possible? I asked. These cubs have not had contact with the other nurseries in weeks. The neural bridging is not constrained by physical proximity, Zelmoth said slowly. If they can synchronize within a room, there is no theoretical reason they could not synchronize across greater distances. The electromagnetic signatures are subtle, but they would propagate through the station's infrastructure. You are saying they are networking through our own systems, Virgan said. I am saying we do not understand the limits of what they can do. Quinn pulled out her whistle and blew the release pattern. The cubs dissolved their circles and returned to play, utterly unconcerned with the existential crisis happening around them. Circle leader bounded over to Quinn, placed both paws on her legs, and made her questioning sound again. I know, Quinn said, scratching behind the cub's ears. You want to learn more. We will do advanced lessons tomorrow. There cannot be advanced lessons, Tinara said. We need to halt this immediately and study the long-term implications. Halt what? Learning? Quinn's expression hardened in a way I had not seen before. These cubs are not a problem to be solved. They are kids who needed structure and got it. If they are smarter than you expected, maybe that says more about your expectations than about them. Circle leader made a sharp, definitive chirp. Every cub in the room stopped playing and sat down. Not in circles this time. In a single large group, all facing the council experts, all perfectly still. The silence was deafening. I believe, Volquin said carefully, that they are making a statement. 23 predator cubs, 3 cycles old on average, sat in perfect formation and demonstrated more discipline than most adults I knew. They held the position for 10 seconds, 15, 20, waiting for something, though I could not fathom what. Then steady stood, walked to the center of the group, and raised one paw. Circle leader chirped again. Every cub raised one paw in unison. They are voting, Quinn said quietly. They are showing you they can make decisions together. The cubs lowered their paws and, as one collective movement, lay down on their sides. Submissive posture, but not fearful. Relaxed. They were demonstrating that they understood the tension, chose not to escalate it, and were perfectly capable of regulating their own behavior without intervention. My species had been studying predator psychology for 300 cycles. Quinn had been working with them for 3 weeks. Yet here we were, watching cubs do things we swore were impossible while she calmly took notes, like she was documenting a successful training session. Because to her, that is exactly what this was. The emergency council session lasted 40 minutes, which tells you everything about how serious they considered the situation. We convened in the observation room above the nursery so we could watch the cubs while we argued about their fate. The cubs, completely unbothered by our crisis, were teaching each other a new game that involved passing a ball using only their mouths without dropping it. Zelmoth wanted to separate them immediately. Tinara wanted to isolate Quinn and study her methods in controlled conditions. Volquin, to her credit, wanted to simply observe and document what happened next. I mostly wanted to lie down in a dark room until reality started making sense again. Quinn was not at the session. She was in the nursery because someone needed to supervise the cubs, and she was the only one they consistently listened to. We cannot allow this to continue unchecked, Zelmoth argued. These cubs are forming a collective consciousness. That changes their fundamental nature as a species. Or it reveals capacities we never knew they had, Volquin countered. We have been treating predator cubs as sophisticated animals for generations. What if we were wrong? What if they always had this potential, and we simply never gave them the tools to access it? Through the observation window, I watched Circle Leader organize her focus pod into a new formation. Instead of a circle, they sat in a line, each cub's nose touching the tail of the one in front. They closed their eyes and synchronized their breathing. Within 30 seconds, the other cubs had noticed and were forming their own lines. They are innovating, I said, creating new patterns without external guidance, which proves they have moved beyond simple training into actual cognitive development, Tinara said. We need to understand the mechanism before this spreads further. Virgin's comm activated again. Security Chief, I have reports from 6 more nurseries. Cubs are self-organizing. Some are attempting vocalizations that sound like speech patterns. One group has apparently started sorting their toys by color. Color sorting, Zelmoth repeated. That requires abstract categorization and symbolic thinking. That also requires someone to teach them what colors are, Volquin noted. They did not spontaneously invent color theory. They learned it from somewhere. Down in the nursery, Quinn was sitting with Quick, the small gray cub. She held up colored cards, said words the monitoring system could not quite capture, and Quick touched each card with her paw in response. Basic association training, except Quick was getting every single response correct. The human did this in 3 weeks, I said. Imagine what happens if she continues for 3 months, 3 cycles. These cubs will be functionally equivalent to adult intelligence before they reach physical maturity, Zelmoth said. They will be children in bodies that can kill, with minds that can outthink most adults. So we teach them control. Quinn's voice came through the comm system. She had apparently activated it herself. That is literally what we have been doing. You are scared they are getting smarter, but you are ignoring that they are also getting calmer, more controlled, and more cooperative. Those things come together. You should not be listening to this session, Tinara said. Your observation room has transparent walls, and I can read body language. You are debating whether to shut down my program. Quinn looked up at the window, directly at us. I'm asking you to consider what happens if you do. These cubs have learned structure. They have learned cooperation. They have learned that they can control their impulses and make choices. You take that away, they go back to being frustrated, overstimulated predators with no outlet. That is, more dangerous than letting them continue learning. Circle leader chirped loudly. Her entire focus pod came to attention, then walked to the observation window. They sat in formation, looking up at us with those two aware eyes, and waited. They know we are discussing them, Quinn said. They understand that we hold decision-making authority over their circumstances. Steady joined Circle Leader's group, then Whistle, then Quick. Soon all 23 cubs sat beneath the observation window in perfect rows, silent and attentive. It was not threatening. It was the opposite of threatening. They were demonstrating exactly what Quinn had said: control, cooperation, and choice. What do you want us to see? I asked them, knowing they could not answer but needing to ask anyway. Circle Leader stood. She walked to the center of the room, sat down, and raised one paw. Every other cub raised their paw in unison. They held the position for 5 seconds, then lowered their paws together. Circle Leader stood again, walked to a toy bin, selected a specific toy, carried it to the equipment shelf, and placed it carefully in a designated storage container. Then she looked at Steady. Steady stood, selected a different toy, and placed it in a different container. Whistle went next, then Quick, then every single cub in sequence. They were cleaning up. Without prompting, without external reward, they were voluntarily organizing their space because they understood the concept of shared responsibility. That is learned social behavior, Tinara said quietly. Advanced, learned social behavior. Quinn walked to the center of the cubs. They want you to understand that they are not dangerous. They are not going to hurt anyone. They just want to keep learning. She crouched down, and Circle Leader immediately came to her side. This gorgeous girl has started asking questions, not with words yet, but with intention. She wants to know why things work the way they do. She wants to understand her environment. That is not predator behavior. That is person behavior. The word hung in the air like a challenge. You are suggesting we reclassify them, Zelmoth said. I am suggesting you recognize what they already are. Quinn scratched Circle Leader behind the ears. We did this with dogs. Everyone thought they were just wolves that hung around human camps. Then we realized they were partners, companions, individuals with personalities and preferences. It took thousands of years. These cubs are doing it in weeks because someone finally gave them a chance. Virgan spoke from his position near the door. Other stations are requesting human consultants. Word has spread about the results here. They want their cubs to receive the same training. Because it works, Quinn said simply. It works because predators are not the problem. Understimulation, lack of structure, and no outlet for their intelligence is the problem. You have been treating symptoms instead of causes for generations. Volquin made a decision. I saw it in the way her posture shifted, her chromatic patches settling into a determined pattern. I propose a 6-month trial program. Quinn continues her training methods under close observation. We document everything, analyze the developmental outcomes, and assess long-term implications. But we do not halt progress that is clearly beneficial to the cub's well-being. Beneficial, Zelmoth said. They are forming a hive mind. They are forming community, Volquin corrected. There is a difference. Hive minds subsume individual identity. These cubs are enhancing their individual capabilities through collective practice. That is called society. Tinara was silent for a long moment, watching the cubs complete their cleanup routine with efficiency that would shame most adult crews. I will support the trial program on one condition. We establish clear developmental benchmarks and safety protocols. If the cubs show signs of losing individual autonomy, we intervene immediately. Agreed, Volquin said. She looked at me. Kilvan, you are the nursery administrator. This is ultimately your decision. I looked at the cubs, at Circle Leader, who had somehow learned to organize her peers into functional working groups, at Steady, who understood patience and delayed gratification, at Quick, who was learning color theory at 3 cycles old, at Whistle, who mimicked sounds and was working toward actual language. Then I looked at Quinn, who treated predator cubs like they were students instead of animals, and got results that invalidated everything I thought I knew. 6-month trial, I said. But I want weekly reports, daily monitoring, and the authority to modify or halt the program if anything appears to compromise the cub's safety or development. Fair enough, Quinn agreed. The council experts left to file their reports. Virgin removed his guards from the doors. Threnu packed up his medical equipment, muttering about rewriting his entire understanding of predator neurology. I stayed in the observation room, watching the nursery return to normal operations. Except nothing was normal anymore. The cubs had free time now, a concept Quinn had introduced. Time where they could choose their own activities without structure or direction. Some played, some rested. Some formed spontaneous focus circles because apparently meditation was now a recreational activity for 3-year-olds. Circle Leader approached the observation window. She sat directly below me, looked up, and made a sound that was definitely trying to be a word. It came out as a chirp-growl hybrid, but the intention was clear. She was greeting me, acknowledging my presence, treating me like an individual worthy of recognition instead of just an authority figure to be obeyed or ignored. I activated the comm. Hello, Circle Leader. Her tail wagged, once deliberately, like she understood that I had understood. Quinn joined her, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. They are going to keep surprising you, just so you know. This is not the end of the weird stuff. This is the beginning. What comes next? I asked. Language, probably. More complex problem solving. Maybe some basic reading comprehension, if we can develop appropriate materials. She said it like she was discussing lesson plans, not species redefining cognitive breakthroughs. Oh, and I think some of them are going to want to learn mathematics. Quick especially. She really likes patterns. Mathematics, I repeated. Why not? If they can count, they can add. If they can add, they can multiply. It is just progressive skill building. Quinn pulled out a small notebook and started sketching lesson plans. I am thinking we introduce musical training too. Rhythm and melody are great for neural development, and several of them have already shown interest in my whistle patterns. Through the window, I watched 23 predator cubs who were rapidly becoming something else entirely. Not just smart animals, not quite people yet, but heading that direction faster than any evolutionary model could explain. They were students, learners, individuals with preferences and personalities and potential that we had never bothered to cultivate because we assumed they were incapable. Quinn had proven we were wrong in 3 weeks. I did not want to imagine what the next 6 months would bring. Except I did want to imagine it. Because for the first time in my career, I was watching predator cubs thrive instead of merely survive. Circle Leader yawned, showing all her very sharp teeth, then curled up at Quinn's feet and fell asleep. Steady joined her, then Quick, then the rest of the focus pod. They made a pile of furry predator children, breathing in unconscious synchronization, their minds still touching even in sleep. Quinn pulled out her datapad and started typing notes for tomorrow's lessons. Just another day at work. Just another species-defining paradigm shift before lunch. I left the observation room and returned to my office. There were reports to file, protocols to update, and an entire career's worth of assumptions to discard. But first, I made a note in my personal log. Day 21 of Human Enrichment Program. The Cubs are meditating, problem-solving, and possibly inventing democracy. Quinn says this is normal. I am choosing to believe her because the alternative is admitting I understand nothing about my own field. Program continues. Reality optional. Somewhere in Nursery 3, a 3-year-old predator cub dreamed in synchronized harmony with 22 of her peers, and the universe quietly rewrote the rules about what was possible.